So, what went wrong with the 2022 Royal Rumble? This is Troy from Dropkicks and Fireballs, and I wanted to discuss the most recent WWE pay per view and just give my thoughts on some of the matches, some of the high points, many of the low points, unfortunately, for a pay per view that I was really excited by but felt a little underwhelmed with at the end of it. So, I'm going to run through the card and just highlight some of the moments that I think stood out the most to me from last night's pay-per-view. So the first thing of note for me was I was glad that this was on a Saturday. Usually these pay-per-views are on a Sunday night if they run long or if I can't start watching them right off the bat. I'll, start the pay-per-view a little bit later and, it could run you into midnight if you're not watching it live. So it felt great to be able to watch this on a Saturday and not have to worry about waking up early the next day. So I don't know if this is the plan moving forward. This is the second or third recent pay-per-view that they've done on a Saturday. But to be honest, I hope they do more of them like this. So the first match of the night, and honestly one of the best matches of the night, was Reigns versus Rollins. And this is what I love about wrestling. It takes years sometimes to develop certain storylines or just wrestlers working with each other over the years. You can have moments that come back later that feel extra special when you've been following the wrestlers for a while. So what I'm talking about here is they just had a lot of good callbacks. Obviously, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins started off with the Shield, and they were doing a lot of things to just bring us back to that to show how much these two have grown since then, but how that's really where they just started together. So the first thing of note was Seth Rollins' entrance. He came in after Roman Reigns, which was odd at first, but then as his music hit, it all made sense. Instead of his new music that we hear now, the Shield's old music started to play, and I popped for this. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny, smart, a great way for Seth Rollins to play more mind games with Roman Reigns. You can see how annoyed Reigns was by this. Seth Rollins came out in his old Shield gear, but having the mannerisms of the character he portrays now. So it worked great for me. The crowd loved it. He pulled it off great. And this is one of the things that I just love about wrestling, when you can just have storylines that take years to come full circle, or just to call back to things that happened so many years ago between two different wrestlers. So I thought that this was great. I'm a sucker when they're able to do this successfully. Even during the match, they called it a shield bomb through the announce table. Technically, it's just a power bomb, but it played off of that history that they have together. And to a lot of people's surprise, Seth Rollins took the offense early, even landed the curb stop early on in the match. And to be honest, I, along with the crowd, kind of got suckered into it because the count went very close. I mean, the ref's hand was pretty much close to the mat before Roman Reigns lifted his shoulder. So it was a bit surprising, and it pulled you in to the match even more because it put that thought in your head, hey, maybe they might actually do this. And the match did not go as I think a lot of people had planned towards the end. I was surprised by the ending. It ended with Roman Reigns choking out Seth Rollins. And even though Seth Rollins was able to get his hands on the rope, Roman Reigns would not break the hold and was disqualified. Now, of course, he's got the champion's advantage, so he doesn't lose the belt. But it wasn't the way that I think a lot of people expected this match to end. And for me, it kind of brought the match down a notch. And, I can't rate it as the best match of the night, mainly because of the ending, but it was still great. My only issue was that after the match, it just left me wondering, well, what's next with how things played out? The only thing I can think of is they're saving this for Elimination Chamber so that Roman has has a match scheduled already for that. As we'll see later on, I think it's pretty obvious that he'll be picked for the Royal Rumble winners WrestleMania match. I do have to give them credit though. After the match, Roman Reigns would go on to beat Seth Rollins senselessly with a chair, harkening back to Seth's heel turn. And this was just one of those things I loved about the match, how they were able to play on so much history. Up next, we had the Women's Rumble. The thing that stood out to me for both Rumbles was they had some odd eliminations, but just going through some of what I felt were some of the highlights and maybe some of the low points of the Women's Rumble. Love Sasha Banks coming into the ring, number one. The second she came in, to me, I thought, okay, she's going to be the Iron Woman of this year's Royal Rumble match. I think she may have done it before, but she's always a great pick for that role. And she started off strong as number one. And I definitely have to shout her out for the Sailor Moon outfit that she wore to the ring. Some of these wrestlers have some anime influences, which is always cool to see when they bring that into the ring. Later on, we would see Queen Zelina make her entrance dressed as Uchiha Madara, and I just thought that was really cool. She was another highlight of the Rumble for me because I felt she was coming off as that crafty heel, doing whatever she had to do to stay in the match. And I feel like every year you have to have that one person that plays that role, and I think she fits it well. She was eliminated by Sasha Banks earlier than I expected, so that confused me. I thought with her in her queen role, they would give her more time in the match. Another highlight for me was Sonya Deville. I was confused when she entered when she did, but then she sat at the announcer's table, and to me that was brilliant. She is technically an official with WWE, so instead of just hopping into the Rumble with a chance to get eliminated, she just sat at the announce table, and that made a lot of sense to me. She did not get into the ring until Cameron came into the Rumble, which at first I was like, okay, this is a odd pick to bring somebody back, but hey, all right. But then we were reminded of her relationship with Naomi, which then sparked Naomi to take matters into her own hands, get in to eliminate Cameron. So I thought this was smart booking because right after that, Naomi came into the ring, and it just helped add to that add fuel to that fire and to the feud, having Deville eliminate someone who's close to Naomi. So kind of a down moment for me was how things ended for Naomi. They teased her having another spot. She every year in the Rumble, she usually has one of those crazy spots where she's doing a handstand or jumping from the section with the fans over to the staircase, and it looked like we were going to get that again this year, but then Sonya Deville came back from being eliminated and just yanked her out the ring. So in one way, it sucks that we don't get to see Naomi pull off another great spot, but then it does add to Sonya Deville being that heel authority figure because she did something that upset Naomi and probably upset the fans. So I get the reasoning for it, but I would have liked to see the spot. We did not have a lot of that this year in either Rumble, and I feel the reason for it in this position was probably because of what would happen later on in the Men's Rumble, but I'll talk about the negative on that later. So Rhea Ripley eliminated Queen Zelina and Carmella at the same time. It made sense. She's got beef with them for a while now. But to me, I was hoping to see Zelina have a much longer run than that. It felt very short. She was like the 8th person eliminated, and I just thought they could have given her some more time to shine. When I see people win the King of the Ring tournament or win it for the women in the Queen's Crown tournament, I do expect them to get some moments just to highlight them. Let this be something that pushes them. And they've tried with Zelina, but in this role, I thought they could have let her last in the Rumble a bit longer. Another highlight for me was Mickie James. I thought she looked really cool coming out with the Impact belt. I know there's probably a lot going on in the background to even allow that to happen between WWE and Impact Wrestling. But to see her come back, she didn't leave on the best terms last time, but to see her come back, come with her championship belt, and for them to really make her a big deal, I thought that was pretty cool. I do think she could have lasted longer, but I guess it was more of a pipe dream that she was going to be winning the Rumble, but I do feel she'd have been a strong candidate for Final Four, Final Five. Something that stood out to me was Nikki Bella eliminating Liv Morgan. It made no sense to me. I don't get what the point of this is. If she eliminates Liv Morgan, where does that lead to? They're not going to have a feud moving forward, because I do believe the Bellas came for maybe just a one-time appearance. So now one of your rising stars in Liv Morgan gets eliminated rather early, and it just kind of felt pointless, to be honest. I didn't get it. But one moment I really loved in the Women's Royal Rumble was Nikki Ash and a couple of things that she did. First of all, when she came in, Rhea Ripley was waiting for her. So she's standing at the ropes. She's waiting for her to come down the aisle. But instead, Nikki Ash sneaks in the ring from the back and tries to eliminate her. Thought this was a smart move. I loved it. It didn't work, but just in regards to people thinking outside the box, I like it when they show wrestlers doing that. The one thing I have to point out, though, is WWE is going to have to find another way to do these sneak from behind attacks. Pretty much anytime you see them zoom in on a wrestler's face and stay there, you know that the reason for this is because someone's going to attack them from behind. I called it when Nikki Ash music's hit. She didn't come out, and they were just staying fixated on Rhea Ripley as compared to pulling out to show more of the ring. I get it. It's not the easiest thing to pull off, but I do hope that they're able to figure that out to make things less predictable. Something else that I really loved with Nikki Ash was her attack on Molly Holly. Molly Holly came out using her old superhero gimmick, and out of nowhere comes Nikki Ash and attacks her. I thought this was funny. I thought it was smart, and I think it's the feud that I didn't know I needed between a superhero and an almost superhero. So I would not be mad if they brought Molly Holly back for another appearance or two just to have this kind of matchup. I think it could be fun, different, and I think both of them could pull it off, to be honest with you. So one of the biggest highlights of the night, Ronda Rousey entering 28 to the Women's Rumble. Once she popped up, I think everyone knew how this was going to end. She'll go on to win the Rumble, and I think her appearance, I said it before in my predictions that if she's in this Rumble, she's winning it, and that's exactly what happened. But some things to mention still. Shayna Baszler came in at number 30, someone who was a dark horse, but that I was kind of rooting for in this Rumble because I'd like to see them do more with her. One thing I would have loved if there was more interaction with her and Rousey. It was a little confusing because at one point it felt like they were going to join up and start eliminating people together. And they definitely beat up some people in the ring and had a few eliminations, but then they kind of started circling each other a little bit as if they were going to square off. So to me, that didn't make any sense because I would figure the two of you would work together. You're old buddies, 4 horsewomen from UFC, and you could work together to get rid of people. But instead, it almost felt as if they were going to attack each other until some of the other women got in the mix. So the final 4 were Charlotte, Bianca, Shayna, and Ronda. And the final 2 wound up being Charlotte and Ronda. To me, it made sense. They have history. So I like seeing that interaction between the two of them. They ended it rather quickly. Like Charlotte went for a kick and then Ronda threw out the ring. They didn't spend too much time doing a one-on-one. I like to see it last a little bit longer to add to the build-up. So it kind of felt like it was cut short. But I can't disagree with the pick, but it did feel a little anticlimactic because you knew if Ronda was here, she was going to win it. My main concern was Ronda Rousey did look rusty. She looked a little bit slower than she has in the past, and she also looked a little bit unsure of, where she should go next, who should she attack, and things like that. So she definitely looked rusty in the ring. I know it's been some time, so I'm hoping, she'll get a few matches to kind of knock off that ring rust and get her back into her old form, because last time she was wrestling, she looked great. She looked different in the ring from everybody else. She has a great blend of wrestling and her mixed martial arts. And I think, by come WrestleMania, she'll have it all put together so that whoever she picks, they'll have a great match. A lot of people seem to think she'll be picking Charlotte. I think her versus Becky Lynch is the way to go. I still think Lita and Charlotte are probably going to have their match at WrestleMania, but only time will tell. The next match on the card was Becky Lynch versus Dewdrop. Not much to go off on the match here. The biggest thing people are talking about is the fact that the WrestleMania sign, caught on fire during the match, and you could kind of see that the crowd was kind of out of it. They just went through a long rumble, so that's always a bad spot to be in. And then you have this huge distraction of a potential fire in the crowd. So that was something that took a lot of people out of the match. But the two women did great. They did not put on a bad match. It's just one that I feel a lot of people did not believe Dewdrop had any chance of winning. But she did look good in the match. I will give it to her. She performed well, and so did Lynch. She did a Molly go round, which I've never seen her do before, which looked great and was surprising. And the finish was good. Multiple times Becky Lynch tried to do her manhandle slam, but she caught Dewdrop on the ropes and was able to do it from there, since she wouldn't have to actually lift her up, and she was able to get the pinfall. The next match of the night was Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley, and I loved this match for most of it, at least. At the start of the match, it was pretty much suplexes from both with straight no selling. So Brock Lesnar suplexed Bobby Lashley. He popped right back up and just gave him a look like, nah, that's not going to hurt me. And Lashley did the same thing to Brock. But I will say he had one vicious suplex on Brock where at first it looked like he dropped him on his head. But Brock Lesnar was able to get back up, and it was a very back and forth match. Brock Lesnar seemed to have a slight edge in it, but Bobby Lashley was staying right there with him. And I loved seeing these two in the ring together. Usually heavyweight matches don't look that great, but these two, being in the shape that they're in, they're able to pick up the pace as needed. And it wasn't slow and lethargic. It felt very high impact, measured, but definitely not slow. This match ended with, again, as what a lot of people predicted, Roman Reigns interfering after there was a nice little ref bump. And the thing to note of the match was he asked for the championship belt from Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman gave it to him, and he used that to attack Brock Lesnar. Bobby Lashley will go on to then pin him and get the win and become the champion. And I love it for Bobby Lashley. I didn't think he would win, but I think he's always great to have as the champion. I do hope they let him have a title reign that goes on for a while. But overall, it's a great match. And with what we'll see later in the Rumble, I think we know what's going to happen with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. After that was Miz and Maurice versus Edge and Beth. This match I was probably the least excited about. Nothing against anyone that was in the match, just not one I was calling for. I will give credit where it's due. Maurice had a nice Hurricane Rana where she jumped off the top rope and hit it on Edge. To my surprise, that was, more than I expected her to do. The match also had a nice double spear from Edge and Beth on The Miz. I thought that looked really cool, and they pulled it off. It wasn't a bad match. I just was never excited for it. So I wasn't as into it as I guess I could have been. And with the Men's Royal Rumble coming up last, you kind of felt like it was a bit of filler in between this and the championship match. Now, moving on to the Men's Rumble. There were some ups and there were some downs. Overall, I felt like it left a bad taste in my mouth. But it started off with AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. I think these are two great choices. Similar to the Women's Rumble with Sasha Banks coming in first, I thought AJ Styles was going to be the Iron Man of this year's match, and I think he was, but the way they treated him during the match, again, didn't make too much sense. Same thing for Austin Theory. He was eliminated a lot earlier than expected. There were a lot of rumors that he was going to have a good showing at this year's Rumble, and a lot of people predicted him of being in the Final Four just to give him some shine and give him that rub. But he was eliminated a lot earlier than I think most people expected. Another moment that I personally loved was Robert Roode coming in and facing off against AJ Styles. While they were facing off, the crowd was giving them TNA chants, and I loved it. Like I said, I love a good callback. This doesn't happen without the fans adding to it, which is great. I love that they were getting recognized for their years over in TNA. We can't pretend like wrestlers didn't have a past before WWE, and when the fans help bring that about, I think it's great because it shows the length of the careers that these people have had. Robert Roode may have not had the most successful WWE run, but that doesn't take away from, all the years he spent in TNA having a successful career. Another thing that stood out to me was Ricochet going up against Omos. Omos hit him with a brutal chop on his chest, and Ricochet just dropped. It's easy to say that he was selling it, but that looked like it hurt. Something that looked odd to me during the Rumble, as Sheamus came down to the ring, Ridge Holland was eliminated just as Sheamus came towards the ring, and it almost appeared as if maybe Sheamus was supposed to catch him or help him stay up, but Holland just kind of fell to the floor, and part of me felt like maybe something was botched here. Probably the most surprising elimination for me in this Rumble was Madcap Moss eliminating AJ Styles. This made zero sense to me. I don't get it. I thought AJ Styles would have lasted much longer. I don't see how this helps Madcap Moss or AJ Styles. It's really a head scratcher on this because what's the point? They're not on the same brand, so it's not like they can feud after this. And it doesn't make AJ Styles look any stronger when he had such a great start to the Rumble. Some might think that this was a way for Madcap Moss and Corbin to just show some strength as they were getting some eliminations before Drew McIntyre came out, but I did not like this at all. One of the down moments for me during this Rumble was Kofi Kingston and his botched spot. Soon after he entered, he was pushed off the ropes by Kevin Owens, and it seemed like the goal was for him to, as he's done similarly in the past, go from the ropes to the barricades on outside the ring and hang on from there. But I think he took too much air and came down with too much force to where he hit the barricades and his feet hit the floor. He was trying to sell it off as if he didn't, but the refs saw it and they said he was out. I think it would have looked really bad if he did this, the live crowd sees it, and then they try to pretend as if he did not just hit the floor. They've done this in the past in other Rumbles, but with everyone with cameras out, the cameras being right on him as this happened, they didn't even try and pull it off, and he was out. It was a sad showing. To me, it's even more reason why you want to at least give one cool spot in the Women's Rumble, because if something gets botched in the Men's Rumble, then you have no one pulling off something that the crowd can ooh and ah about for trying to stave off from elimination. Not only that, but I think he may have hurt himself. It looked like a pretty rough landing when he landed on the barricade. So Big E enters at 26, which is way later than I expected, as he was one of the favorites to win the Rumble. So something from that entrance felt off to me from the get-go. And with him being eliminated soon in the match, it was pretty disappointing to see that he couldn't get more time to shine or just a bigger showing in the Rumble. To me, he should have at least been in the Final Four, and he wasn't. And the Final Four, in my opinion, just left a lot to be desired. But one of the highlights of the Rumble was surprise entrant Bad Bunny. He shines again. He comes in and immediately does a crossbody on Sheamus. One of the best surprises in the Rumble this year, Bad Bunny. He shines again. He comes into the ring and immediately hits a top rope crossbody on Sheamus. He eliminated Sheamus and Ziggler after partnering up with Rey Mysterio, and then he would go and try and eliminate Rey Mysterio as well. It was genius. He showed he really had that every man for himself mentality, and that he was really going for it. He's one of the best celebrities to work in WWE in a really long time, both in the tag match he had previously and in this Rumble appearance. Like, he's someone who I feel gets it, puts in the work, and shines when he comes out on that stage. Now, one of the biggest low points, or actually the biggest low point for me in the Rumble, was the entrance of Shane McMahon. Why? That's all I could think after he came out. Was there no one better that they could have put in this spot? It made no sense to me. I understand some people in the crowd cheered for it. They always like to see Shane McMahon. To me, you're taking away from other superstars who could benefit from this. Shane McMahon does not benefit from this. There's no point in him being in this Rumble. Not when you have so many superstars who you didn't use, who you could have used in this role. It made no sense. I've enjoyed Shane McMahon matches in the past, but at this point, I don't need to see him, at least not in a Rumble. To me, the Royal Rumble should be used to highlight your talent and create moments. Just to have him pop up to be there for a few minutes doesn't highlight anybody, and it doesn't add to the future growth of the company. I do want to shout out Riddle for having the best move of the Royal Rumble. It was a great sequence where Randy Orton RKO'd Otis. Otis falls to the floor, but as he's getting back up, he's on his hands and his knees. Riddle runs across the ring, jumps off his back, and RKO's Drew McIntyre. It looked great. They pulled it off wonderfully. And to me, that was one of the moves of the night, really, and one of the best moves I've ever seen in a Royal Rumble. It was unexpected. I loved how they did it because it was as a part of a string of RKOs that they were delivering, and the crowd ate it up. Now, the final four were Shane O'Mac, Bad Bunny, Brock Lesnar, and Drew McIntyre. This is not the final four I would have expected to see. Lesnar and McIntyre, yes. Bad Bunny, loved his appearance, but was odd to see him in the final four. Shane McMahon did not belong there at all, let alone in the final four. I feel like when it comes down to that final four, have one or two people in there that you can use it to highlight them moving forward. That's a great rub for any young talent. Hey, they didn't win the Rumble, but they were in the last four. They had a 25% chance. You can sell that for the next few weeks as you're going into the next pay-per-view, as you're going into WrestleMania. What is the point of having Shane McMahon or Bad Bunny there when that's not going to help them going into the WrestleMania season? This is supposed to be the road to WrestleMania, so use it as a way to build the talent towards the biggest show of the year. But how are you doing that if you don't even put names in the final four that could benefit from it on that road? Drew McIntyre made sense. Obviously, Brock Lesnar made sense because he would then go on to win the Rumble. I like them being the last two as they have history together. They even called it out in the ring, as you could hear Drew McIntyre saying, hey, it's going to be the same result as last time. I thought that was really cool. I love when wrestlers acknowledge the history that they have. But this Final Four, I just felt it could have been a lot better. That Shane McMahon spot really just bothers me because I felt like it could have been given to any other wrestler and it would have worked out better. One of the biggest notes I had from the night was there no one better than Shane? So when I think about the other competitors that could have been in the Rumble besides Shane McMahon, names come to mind like Finn Balor, Tommaso Ciampa, LA Knight, Walter or Gunther, whichever they want to call him, Roderick Strong, and I'm sure there's others I can't think of at the moment, but it's just strange because you could have put any one of those guys in that spot. I understand the company, according to what I've heard, doesn't see much in Finn Balor except using him more as an enhancement talent. But still, you have guys who you've been having dark matches with, so I'm sure there's a reason behind that. What great way to help debut them than to put them in the Rumble, to have them get a spotlight, maybe let them be one of the final 4 or final 5, instead of someone who doesn't really have a future in regards to being in the ring on a consistent basis that the fans are going to look towards. So to me, it was a waste of a spot. They could have given it to somebody else, whether it's someone who's actively on the roster or someone who they'd like to debut. They really wasted a chance here to do more with the Rumble by adding a few names that people would like to see, or just to spotlight people who might be coming up in the future. I know there are rumors about Braun Breaker. He would have been great to put in here just so people could get eyes on him, especially to help give that NXT program more eyes to it or more recognition. One of the things that stood out was I do not believe there was a single NXT talent. If they're trying to keep the brand separate, I get it, but it's still an opportunity. And you can't even use that justification because it was only a couple weeks ago where you had someone from NXT on the main roster feuding with AJ Styles and actively interrupting one of the matches. So to me, this was a real head scratcher that they even went this route, and I feel like they really wasted some potential here. Something else that was a low point for the Rumble was that eliminations were missed. I don't know if this was bad timing on the wrestlers' part or how the production was being ran, but there were times where they would pan over to something else or maybe show something that happened previously in the match, and an elimination would occur and you wouldn't even see it. And that would leave the announcers to having to let you know, oh, hey, by the way, this person was eliminated. I know it happened to Shinsuke, it happened to Austin Theory, and one or two others. So it was a bit strange that this happened. This is pretty much the main thing of the match, seeing who gets eliminated. So seeing it on more than one occasion where you don't even see those eliminations or know who eliminated the person, that was just really bad altogether for how the show was put on in regards, or at least in regards to how it was presented to those viewing at home. Overall, I enjoyed the pay-per-view, but I felt underwhelmed with the Rumble winners because the rumors were out there like they normally are. But watching it in execution just made it seem less exciting, especially when they really didn't take the chance to develop any new stars in the Royal Rumble. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me with the Rumble matches, and also the biggest down point. I can't say the whole pay-per-view as a whole sucked, because there were definitely some high points, especially in the beginning with the Reigns and Rollins match, Lesnar and Lashley, and the Women's Rumble was not bad in my opinion. I just felt like they could have done more in regards to who won the Rumble and maybe taken the opportunity to do something different and less expected. I get it. Ronda Rousey's a big name, but she could have returned the Raw after the Rumble and called her shot, and everyone would have understand her getting the other champ that the Royal Rumble winner doesn't choose. So those are just my thoughts overall in regards to the Rumble. If you like the commentary, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next video.